John F. Kennedy, the beloved 35th President of the United States, born Brookline, Massachusetts, May 29, 1917. A politician in the House of Representatives for 6 years and U.S. Senate for 4 years. A World War II veteran, an author, a Pulitzer Prize winner, a husband, and a father. Shortly after winning the Senate election, and as a popular politician, he was picked to run for vice president but had his mind set on a greater goal. He worked hard for several long hours during the weekends and was nominated by the Democratic Party on July 13, 1960, to run as the presidential candidate. With Lyndon B. Johnson by his side, chosen to be his vice president, they run against Vice President Richard M. Nixon in the general election on November 8, 1960, and win, making John the youngest man elected president as well as the first Catholic man elected into office. John F. Kennedy was sworn in as the 35th president on January 20, 1961. In his inaugural speech, he spoke of the need for all Americans to be active citizens. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country, he said.
So, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man.
He also asked the nations of the world to join together to fight what he called the common enemies of man: tyranny, poverty, disease, and war itself. John F. Kennedy, considered one of the greatest presidents ever elected into office. He was a caring president, fighting for civil rights alongside with millions of Americans, and created the Peace Corps to help people internationally. He was set out to better the American way of life, but he was still just a regular American male in the 1960s. The fear of potential nuclear war had everyone on the fritz, during which the Cuban Missile Crisis or the divided city of Berlin had brought more Americans to worry.
Good evening, my fellow citizens. This government, as promised, has maintained the closest surveillance of the Soviet military buildup on the island of Cuba. Within the past week, unmistakable evidence has established the fact that a series of offensive missile sites is now in preparation on that imprisoned island.
The Cold War didn't just bring fear into the United States, it pushed us competitively to be the greatest country in the world. Even though that meant the creation of the atomic bomb, it also meant the participation in the space race against Russia. Kennedy's dedication to put an American man on the moon brought hope and partial peace into the lives of many Americans. He was the first president to ask Congress to approve more than $22 billion for Project Apollo, which had the goal of landing an American man on the moon before the end of the decade.
All right, but we will at 5. Okay, that sounds good.
You don't mind a little dirt here and there, do you, Jay? No.
Things were going great for John F. Kennedy, truly a wonderful president, but unfortunately his presidency was cut short. On November 21st, 1963, President Kennedy flew to Texas to give several political speeches. The next day, as his car drove slowly past cheering crowds in Dallas, shots were fired. Kennedy is fatally shot, and it's the end of an era. The assassin is apprehended hours after the shooting. Lee Harvey Oswald, an American Marxist and former U.S. Marine, was honorably discharged from the Marine Corps and defected to the Soviet Union in October 1959, and returned to America in June 1962. 5 government investigations concluded that Oswald shot and killed Kennedy from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. While in custody, Oswald was fatally shot on live television by local nightclub owner Jack Ruby.
Being let out by Captain Fritz. There is the prisoner. There is Lee. He's been shot. He's been shot. Lee Oswald has been shot. There's a man with a gun. Absolute panic. Absolute panic here in the basement of Dallas Police Headquarters. Detectives have their guns drawn. There is no question about it. Oswald has been shot at point-blank range, fired into his stomach.
He is shot. He is shot. Oswald. It is Oswald.
John F. Kennedy's death caused enormous sadness and grief among all Americans. Hundreds of thousands of people gathered in Washington for the president's funeral, and millions of Americans watched it on live television. Although a very sad conclusion to a great presidency, JFK's brief time in office stands out in people's memories for his leadership, personality, and accomplishments. His coolness when faced with difficult decisions, his ability to inspire people with his eloquent speeches were respected and admired. Still others think his compassion and his willingness to fight for new government programs to help those in need were most important. He made mistakes, like all leaders do, but his optimism about America's future was all that mattered. He believed that people could solve their common problems if they put their country's interests first and worked together. John F. Kennedy was the 35th President of the United States and possibly the best president ever in office.